Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Douglas Mackenzie and Jim Thompson here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. Hi Jim.
Hi Douglas, hi everybody.
Okay folks, tonight our guest is a well-known after-dinner speaker and he's the immediate past president of Bridgeton Burns Club. Cronies everywhere, please welcome Iain Gordon.
Hi Douglas.
How are you doing, Iain?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
And where are you tonight?
I'm at my home in Newton Mearns tonight, and not long off the golf course.
Oh well, we'll talk about that in a minute or two. We always start off with the same question to everybody. Iain, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, Douglas, no problem. I was born in Pollock in Glasgow in 1960, and I know looking at me a lot will find that hard to believe, but yes, brought up in Pollock in the south side and attended Drumcross Road Primary School, which was actually in the same street where I lived, and then went to Leithland Road Primary and latterly at Crookston Castle Secondary, where I had my education there.
And did you study particular subjects? Any favourite subjects?
Probably PE was my favourite subject, but I quite enjoyed likes of maths and English, surprisingly. So, yeah, I had a great time at school and really had a lot of friends at school as well. And at one point, in fact, I didn't want to actually leave school. I stayed on to my 6th year and decided that probably I better get out and go and earn a living somewhere. So I ended up starting as a civil engineer.
So when you were at school, did you get involved in sports or any particular hobbies?
Yeah, I was very active footballer. I played for about 3 or 4 different teams, local teams in Pollock. One in particular was Hillwood Boys Club, which is still going to this day, surprisingly enough. And they had a great structure for the youngsters, and really enjoyed that. Enjoyed the BB as well. Was a very, very active Boys Brigade member. First of all, at the 208 St James's Church, which the Reverend James Curry was the minister at the time, a well-known Burnsian who latterly moved to Dunlop. And I was also involved in the 203 Boys Brigade, played a lot of football with them. And they were great times in Pollock, fantastic times in the Boys Brigade.
And did you have any real adventures with the Boys Brigade?
Yeah, we used to go in the Boys Brigade camps. We did the West Kilbride hike, get it right. Did a lot of things, a lot of sports with them. Down south with the Boys Brigade, Aberdeen was another notable place as well. So it was great, a great kind of learning curve for me, the Boys Brigade, and it certainly instilled a bit of discipline in you, which was helpful in my latter career.
And did you go straight into your civil engineering career, or did you do that through university?
I did it through college. I was at Stowe College and I was working for a company called Fairclough, and we were involved in the construction of the Niddry Street Bridge and then latterly the Shield Hall sewage works. And then my life took a different direction when I applied to join the police.
So the Shield Hall sewage works, I thought they sent all their stuff out in a boat out to the middle of the Clyde. Well,
they did, and then they suddenly realised this is probably not a good idea because of the amount of pollution it was causing in the Clyde. So they built this huge complex in Shield Hall. And it always surprised me that they built it right next to a hospital, which was the Southern General then, and it was quite near the maternity unit. And they basically processed, I know it's probably not an ideal topic for a conversation, but they processed the raw sewage in there, which prevented it going out into the Clyde. And I'm sure you'll remember the boats, the sludge boats that used to go up and down the Clyde. And I think, if I'm my memory serves me correctly, they used to dump the sewage in the water in the Clyde. So that was to prevent all that happening.
Yeah, I remember being able to see the boats. I used to work at Shield Hall with Diageo, so from the offices there, you could see the boats going up and down the Clyde.
That's right. I think I'm trying to remember the name of the boat. Was it? I can see it, but I just cannot remember the name of it.
Wait, was it not just SS Shield Hall or something like that?
No, I think there was a couple of them went up and down and took out all the raw sewage. But yeah, this was high tech then. This is 1978. They had built this high tech sewage works at Shield Hall, and they used to put a kind of it was like perfumed pellets into the air to try and dispel the smell that was caused, and you could still pick it up in the hospital when you were in there.
The one thing I did see on television was that one of the boats is in a museum down in the south coast of England, and there's pilgrims go down there just to get going on that boat.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing.
Hope they've cleaned it up by then.
You also mentioned when we were talking earlier on about golf. Are you an avid golfer?
Yeah, the more I play, the worse I seem to get. But yeah, I've been a member of Ralston Golf Club for the past 36 years. I'm a past captain in there, and I've got a lot of friends in the golfing world. So much so that I ended up joining Irvine Bogside this year. I've been playing there for a number of years, so I'm now a member down there as well. But I'm still active in both clubs and play a lot of golf over the course of the year. Now that I'm retired, I can do these things, Douglas.
And I was reading on your Facebook page that you've got a young granddaughter. Does that not keep you back from the golf?
Not so far, but I suppose it will when she's a wee bit older. But yes, Lexi was born in December last year. She's got a fantastic birthday, born at 12 on the 20th of the 12th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of suits my kind of OCD trait that I have, you know. So that's her 9 months as we do this recording. And yeah, she'll keep me busy, I'm sure, with it.
Well, Jim has Gran Waynes as well, so I'm sure he understands the pleasure.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You forget what when your own kids have grown up, you forget them at that age, you know. But it's great to see her thriving away.
And you said you were retired, and but you kind of started a second career on the after dinner speaking circuit. How did that come about?
Well, actually, it came about from Burn Supper when I was in Johnson Police Office, and I got asked to do a toast to the guest by one of my former colleagues, who was the divisional commander at the time. And lo and behold, it seemed to go down really well. It was at the Lyndhurst Hotel around about 1994, which I'm sure Jim will remember. Huge burn suppers that they had with the Paisley Police Office, or K Division as it was then. And it really just took off from there. And it moved from burn suppers to getting asked to speak at dinners, and organised a few in my own golf club. And it's taken me all over the place, all over the UK, Canada as well. So it's been great fun.
And have they mainly been connected with burn suppers, or have you been speaking at other events as well?
No, not them all. I mean, the after dinner circuit, they do a lot of kind of sportsmen's dinners, and I've been down south, been at a few kind of prestigious golf clubs like Royal Birkdale, did an after dinner at the Royal and Ancient in St Andrews, and also a burn supper in there as well. So yeah, I've been all over the place. I suppose the biggest one from my point of view was the Savoy in London, a huge charity dinner down there. So I've had a great opportunity to speak at all these fancy venues all over the place, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Tremendous. And we've mentioned your granddaughter. What about the rest of the family? Can you give any of them a mention?
Yeah, well, I'm married to Alison, and I've got two grown-up children, Graham, who's Lexi's dad, and my daughter-in-law, Jennifer, and my daughter, Lindsay, and her partner, Derek. So they stay in Renfrew. So we're in regular contact. In fact, I know you'll find it hard to believe, but for my delayed 60th because of COVID from last year, we were at Trump International Golf Course just a couple of weeks ago with the entire family. So we had a great time up there and managed to get a game of golf up there at the Trump course.
Very good. We've skirted around the fact that your career was in the police, and that was deliberate, because I think, given that Jim's career was in the police as well, I'll ask him to talk to you about that, and then to drift into a conversation about your interest in burns. Yes. Okay, Jim.
Yeah. Well, I first bumped into you be K Division.
Yeah, K Division, Jim. Yeah, I think it was.
Because I was there long enough. 12 years in K Division. Crazy K, the CID. Where did you start?
I started in Govan in Orkney Street. In fact, just not far from Shieltall Sewage Works, where I ended up working. So I started in Govan and was promoted sergeant to Greenock around about 1987, I think it was. But yeah, spent my years at Govan, Pollock, where I was brought up, and Giffnock, you know, getting sent all over the division, but mainly in Govan, I have to say.
You eventually went back to Greenock, if my memory serves me right.
I went back as the sub-divisional officer or superintendent, as it was then. I went back there in 2000. And all the thing I remember about Greenock was the office wasn't particularly pretty. In fact, I think it was described as being like a carbuncle in the area, but I had a fantastic view from the superintendent's room over the Clyde. So very, very delightful views. They had one of the yacht races there, and it was spectacular views over the Clyde, and I thoroughly enjoyed it at Greenock.
And if I remember correctly, you spent quite a wee while in headquarters.
I was in headquarters as eventually I went in secondment from Greenock to get into the press office, and I don't know, must have managed to do a pretty good job, or there was nobody else available, but ended up as head of media in there for about 5 years, which was one of the toughest jobs, but one of the most rewarding jobs. I'd moved out back to Saltcoats, the old Saltcoats office, and I was involved in a few things down there, and then get called back into headquarters as head of the press office. So it was me on the television. It wasn't interference that you were experiencing. Unfortunately, it was me for about 5 years doing all the kind of media stuff.
Yeah, it must have been an extremely demanding role as well, given what headquarters is like in the first place. Yeah,
I mean, you were never really off. I mean, you were on call all the time. So any of the big events that the force was involved in, any kind of high-profile murder inquiries or big events, you were there. You were called out to deal with all these things. And yeah, you've got to build up a relationship with the press, and they need to trust you, and you need to trust them to a certain extent. And that was quite a demanding job, constant actually.
Well, in terms of Burns, where did you first meet Burns? Or how did you come into Burns?
So I think we probably, I can't really remember it, but I seem to remember that we had some involvement with Burns in primary school, but it was a kind of fleeting contact with Burns. But it wasn't until I entered the police that I first attended a Burns supper at the Police Recreation Centre at Loch Inch. And that was a Burns supper that was organised by, and I can't even remember what division it was, but that kind of fired my interest in it in the early 80s. And from there, I used to attend quite a few of the Burns suppers that the police organised. At that time, as you'll remember, Jim, the police had Burns suppers going on all the time, with all the different divisions and then headquarters. So there was a huge interest in Burns within the police circles. And a lot of those officers who took part in that, they were excellent speakers and great at doing the recitations. So it was usually a fantastic night when you went to a police Burns supper.
I'm just trying to think back and some of the Burns supper. In fact, you ran the Greenock Police Burns supper for a number of years, because I know I was invited by you to speak at it.
Yeah, I did that. I ran our golf club used to run at Ralston used to run a Burns supper. So I organised that for about 12 years as well. And it was generally jam-packed. You know, you'd hardly get a ticket for these events. And then when I went down to Greenock, organised the Greenock Burns suppers, spoke at quite a few of them as well. And also the Paisley ones latterly, when I was there, I organised quite a lot of the Paisley Burns suppers, and we had a great variety of speakers, yourself included, Jim, and others from the Ayrshire direction that used to come up and entertain us.
I remember when I was you invited me to Ralston, it was with Bert Thompson.
Bert Thompson.
As always, he steals the show. You know,
It's
a great night and a really, really good Burns supper.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we actually at one point, but it was hard work. We organised, there was an all-male one, and then we organised a mixed one in the February. And both of these events were full. There was a huge demand on it. But it's like everything else, unless you get somebody to grasp the nettle and organise these things, they can fall by the wayside. And unfortunately, over the last few years, that's what's happened. That there's quite I'm not saying that there's not a lack of interest, but nobody seems to want to grasp the nettle and organise these things.
And you've been a regular attender as a speaker at the Ayr Police Burns supper at Drin as well.
Yes, yeah, I was involved. Yeah, I got asked to do a few of them, and again, another big event. Also, the Strathclyde Police Burns suppers, if you remember. Yeah. Again, you're talking about maybe 300-400 folk at these things in the old Thistle Hotel. And again, formal events, people that had never been to Burns suppers coming along and really getting into Burns and enjoying the whole atmosphere that's created at a Burns supper.
Yeah. Have you any outstanding memories of a particular Burns supper?
Yeah, well, I suppose there's a few actually. The police Burns suppers, the Strathclyde Police Burns suppers were always a great event. But there's been smaller ones that I've been involved in. One of the past president, he was the honorary president who's sadly passed away at Bridgeton Burns Club, Iain McPherson, who was well known in the police Burns suppers. He organised one up at East Kilbride in his local Indian restaurant, and it was renamed the Far East Bachelors Club, and we were all given certificates, those that were taking part in it. And again, he did a toast to the Pecora. So these things stick in your mind about Burns and the places that you end up. I was also did a wee event for Bridgeton at the Bachelors Club and also at Ellisland Farm. Internationally, the big one that sticks in my mind is the Halifax Burns Club in Nova Scotia, where I was over there doing the Immortal Memory. And again, there was about 300 or 400 at that. A lot of expats, a lot of people from Greenock and Largs and Paisley, Glasgow, and obviously Canadians, the local Canadians there. But the thing that always sticks in my mind about that was the Canadian Defence Minister was there, who asked for a copy of my speech, which unfortunately I forgot to send him.
Touche. But you've been secretary and president of Bridgeton, to my personal knowledge. I'm going to tell everybody out there a wee bit about Bridgeton Burns Club, which is obviously really well known for its interaction with youth.
Yeah, so the Bridgeton Burns Club was formed in 1870, and it was out in the East End of Glasgow, obviously, as the name implies. And it was probably about 4 or 5 of the kind of founding members of Bridgeton Burns Club decided that they wanted to do, as they called it, an anniversary dinner for Robert Burns. And part of the agreement was that they would invite the local schools to participate in a competition. And that was the origins of what we have today. So throughout the 150 years last year, there's been an anniversary dinner. I'm not aware, I think even during the war, they managed to have some kind of dinner. Obviously not in the scale that they probably had at that particular time. But the whole ethos of Bridgeton Burns Club is involving the local schools in the East End of Glasgow. And they have this competition. Now it's progressed. They never actually had their own, the premises I think it's in James Street in Bridgeton, but it was only office premises they had there. So in recent times it moved to the Marriott Hotel. And the Bridgeton Burns Club's run by a board of directors, which includes the past presidents of the club as well. And there's probably about 40 involved in that. They have the main event, the anniversary dinner, on the 25th of January, except if it falls on a Sunday, it moves to the Saturday. And it's held, as I say, in the Marriott Hotel, where there is over 600 at it, which is a huge Burns supper, one of the biggest probably in the world. And that's where they do their fundraising for the schools competition. And the schools competition is held on the first Friday in December. And it's usually all the schools in the East End of Glasgow competing. They've got music, they've got an art competition, they've got soloists, the whole gambit. And that is a massive, massive event. There's probably in the region of maybe 1,100 children taking part in that. So what happens on that night is we've got a huge amount of trophies that they've gathered over the years. All the kids get a medal for participating. We've got great cooperation from the schools. We couldn't do it without the support of the teachers, obviously. And we select a few to take part in our anniversary dinner at the Marriott. So you've got kids from primary 1 right through to secondary participating in front of 600 at the Marriott Hotel. And the emotions of seeing a wee primary 1 boy or girl reciting a verse from Tam O'Shanter, and you and I being in the police and seeing everything, Jim, I'm telling you, the tears are flowing when you watch it. It's just incredible to watch. What an experience to see the kids and the passion that they put in and have put in for Robert Burns. And then later on in the march, we have a schools concert where all the parents can get invited along to see their kids performing there. So it's a very, very good structure in my mind that we've got, and we rely on a lot of support from people attending the dinner to raise the money.
Yeah, and it's matured now to the point where I'm seeing in recent school competitions anyway, more and more Glasgow children being involved, not just from Bridgeton, but from the whole city. And there was a period of time there where we didn't see any Glasgow children, and it was a shame.
Yeah.
But the year I think we had it at Hutchison's, there was, I don't know, there must have been, somewhere in the region of 70 or 80 Glasgow children participating in that event. Wonderful.
I mean, it's the schools, the whole structure of the schools, education systems changed as well. So there's not as many schools in the East End of Glasgow that there once was. So it has kind of moved its boundaries a bit to get other schools involved. But that's no bad thing. Let's be honest. If we can get Burns into all the schools in Glasgow, that's a real bonus. But it's a phenomenal event, and the kids make it, the children make it on the night. We have always had very, very prestigious, well-known speakers from entertainment. Jerry Carruthers, who you will know from the Burns world, Professor Jerry Carruthers. I was fortunate enough to have him speak at the 150th anniversary when I was president, and that was a huge honour for me to be present in that year. And given, what happened in a matter of weeks after it, we went into lockdown. So on the 25th of January 2020, we've got 600 at the Marriott, and then within a matter of weeks, everything's cancelled. We're all in lockdown. So we were really, really fortunate to have that event. We also had an event that the City Council, Glasgow City Council, kindly afforded us an event at the City Chambers, which we managed to get that in, and then within 2 weeks, we were in lockdown. So it was, given what happened after that, it was really remarkable that we managed to get these events in place.
Must have been a difficult year for you as president, given the circumstances with COVID.
It was, because I was due to demit office in April, and because of COVID, I stayed on. So I did an extra year, which is not unheard of. I think the first president of the club did 3 years, but certainly post-war, there's only been a president each year. So because of COVID, we couldn't do anything. Obviously, everything was cancelled. The schools competition was cancelled. We latterly went down the road having board meetings by Zoom. But as you know, you can never recreate an atmosphere of a Burns supper on Zoom. It's very, very difficult. And we were the same. We were in that position as well. We had a small anniversary dinner as such for the board on the 25th of January 2021. And we did a toast to Burns, and that was it, just to say that we'd managed to do that. But it was really sad that we couldn't do that, but there was obviously a lot far worse going on in the world than us having to organise a Burns supper.
What about 22? Are you planning for that?
Yeah, the signs are good that we will have an event at the Marriott. We're not sure about numbers, but they're certainly keen to have an event, maybe not in the same scale as we normally have. I think my fear, and probably the fear of many who are in the Burns world and the after dinner circuit and other organisations that I'm involved in, is will there be a reluctance for people to come back and attend events, and attend social events and be part of the organisations that they've always been a part of. And that's a real worry for everyone, I suppose.
Can I take you back and maybe to cheerier times? And you were talking about having your supper where there was an address to the Pecora. The question Jim didn't ask was it a haggis Pecora?
Yes, it was. In fact, Douglas, I mean, that's a good guess, but it was a haggis Pecora. Yes.
see, I'm old enough to remember Murphy's Pecora House at the end of Argyle Street, where you could go there on a Saturday night and have a pint and have a mixed Pecora, which would be haggis Pecora, black pudding Pecora, and tatty scone Pecora. And I always thought it was sad that that place doesn't exist anymore.
I know. No,
Well,
I
so-
can assure you, it was haggis pakora that the toast was given to.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised it doesn't exist because that sounds remote.
But yeah, I mean, Jim was talking about, we're talking about a few of the venues. I did one at Pollock House, and being a Pollock boy, again, that was a great honour. It was a kind of private burn supper that a couple I know organised, and it was in the kitchen within Pollock House. And those of you, I'm a member of the National Trust for Scotland, but if you're in the National Trust and haven't been to Pollock House, then go in and have a look. And it was stunning. There was only maybe about 40 or 50 at it, but the atmosphere was just incredible, and it was a fantastic burn supper. And they really created that lovely ambience in the kitchen area. So it's good. It's great being part of the huge burn suppers, but sometimes the smaller ones are equally as good. And yeah, everybody that was there thoroughly enjoyed it.
And Pollock House, even during the day, they make great scones.
They do, that's right. Yeah, they've got a lovely cafe in there as well.
Tremendous. Can I ask you about your interest in burns, whether there's any particular poem or song or character in burns that's interested you over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the music of Burns as well, but I mean, the obvious one, and I wish I could recite it, but I don't. One of these days I will. I'm a speaker. I can do the address to the haggis and all the rest of it, but I always look on with envy at the guys that can do Tam O'Shanter. It is one of my favourites, and I know we hear it a lot at Burn suppers, but I do love the music. And Jim touched on the Air Police Burn supper, where we hear some beautiful singers there, and the one that comes to mind was McPherson's Rant, which it was played with a professional accordion player, and it was just phenomenal. The hairs in the back of your head, if you've got any, are up, and it just hearing that, and then songs like the Lyric, and to hear them live is beautiful. You know, it's just fantastic.
Linton McMillan sings McPherson's Slum.
That's who it was. That's the very man. That was the
And
very
he sings it, he addresses it to the traffic department every year because he's a road haulier to trade.
That's right.
Ian Muir's the accordionist, one of the best I've ever heard of.
Oh, incredible, Jim. Absolutely incredible. In fact, Bobby Shaw, who is the current president of Bridgeton Burns Club, was speaking with me that night at the dinner, if you remember right. And we played that, and they played that, and it was just amazing, absolutely amazing. So the music of Burns does it to me as well, I have to say. It kind of fires up my enthusiasm for Burns every time I hear it. And you know, and the lead up to all these Burns suppers that I go to, kicking off in the beginning of January, that's my wife's sick of it probably, but I'm playing Burns songs all the time in the lead up to that. So she generally doesn't see me at the weekends from early January to, well, it's extending into March nowadays, Jim, as you'll know. But so hopefully that will continue next year. Certainly the numbers are there, but whether or not the events take place remains to be seen.
Well, there's certainly positive things coming through. I mean, as you say, March, I've already booked well into March. It's surprising that folk have got the confidence, actually.
Yeah. One of the other things I'm involved in, the Burns side of things, is the Jean Armour Burns Trust, which I don't know whether you've heard of that, but this was...
Yeah, I've been in touch with who was the treasurer who became the chairman of it.
Robert Stevenson, yeah.
Robert Stevenson is one of the best supporters of the Federation children's competition, annual children's competition that has been, and he's been a wonderful assistant. And he comes every year as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great guy, absolutely great guy.
yeah, he's a real enthusiast, Robert, and so I'm one of the trustees involved in that. So we support as best we can. We can't support everything, but we do our best to support a lot of not so much the kind of common or garden things that you would find in the Burns circuit, but maybe people are putting on plays, or children are looking for support and things, or young musicians who are, as long as it's Burns related, the trust will have a look at the applications and try and give it some support along the way. But so I'm involved with that, and it's quite rewarding to see that as well.
So what's the history of the Jean Armour Burns Trust?
I thought you were going to ask me that, Douglas, and I hope I get this right, but it came from this, the funding came, or the funds that they have now came from the sale of the houses down in Mauchline. They were sold to, if I've got this right, the council down there, and the profits were, this created this fund. How it came about before that, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure somebody out there will be able to find the actual history of where it came from. But they owned the houses down there, and then, as I say, once they were sold off, the Jean Armour Burns Trust was formed. And they support the residents down there as well, the trust. And there is a small kind of group of houses and residents, and they support the residents down there.
I always remember when the Jean Armour homes were there. Newcomnock Burns Club was having a celebration under the banner of Robert Burns and Newcomnock, and we had a wee exhibition. And to get some artifacts, we went to our friends in Mauchline Burns Club, who had some stuff in at the museum in Mauchline. But it was being refurbished, so all of their stuff was in the Jean Armour homes in one of the spare houses. And we were allowed to borrow anything that we wanted. And I can remember trying to take some mannequins of Robert Burns and Jean Armour from the Jean Armour homes up to Newcomnock to display at our exhibition. And unfortunately, the only way I could get them in the car was with one on top of the other in the back seat. So I often wonder what people thought when they looked in the back window of my car.
It's funny you should say that. I mean, one of the things that we're doing at Bridgeton just now is we've got a lot of artifacts and documents held at the Mitchell Library, and they're needing digitalised so that we've got a proper audit and record of them. So we're hoping that we can maybe get some kind of project going with that. I've had a look at some of the things that are in there. The actual minute book going back to the formation of the club in 1870 is still in there. And I know, being involved in other organisations, a lot of these things go missing, but fortunately we've got that. And I think it's important now that we get this into a proper order, proper audit. And not only that, we start to make sure that we can gather all the documentation that we've got over our period of time in Bridgeton Burns Club, because the history of the club is absolutely fascinating. And we're hoping to be working with Glasgow University to get that project started.
Excellent.
Are they the right people to go to as well? Because they've been great down here in Kilmarnock, for example, with the McKee collection, in terms of assistance to, and it's use, it's logging it all, it's gathering it all, it's cataloguing it all. It's really quite a difficult task, and the average person struggles with it. You need professionals who know what they're doing. I'm quite sure Burns Scotland and Jerry Carruthers would be of help if they can.
They've indicated that they'll support us and do it, and they'll probably take it on, hopefully. But I mean, Jerry Carruthers is an absolutely wonderful supporter of Bridgeton Burns Club, and you know, you could listen to Jerry all night talking about Burns. It's just his knowledge of it is incredible, and they're definitely the right people to be involved in this. I mean, interestingly, when I looked at this, the minute book for Bridgeton Burns Club, there's photographs in it as well. You know, we have a kind of, one of the things I forgot to say is we have an annual outing. We've been to like Ellersland Farm, the Bachelors Club, and to Bolton or to Boughton, as they say down there. And that had continued as well from, I don't know, maybe not right at the outset of when the club was formed, but there's certainly documentation and photographs in that we really need to explore and get all that information out there, because people should have the opportunity to see that.
It's nice of you to mention Boughton, because the next episode of My Life with Robert Burns, we're talking to one of the Boughton lasses.
All right, okay.
So
okay.
That's worth looking forward to.
Yeah.
Iain, you talked about your interest in speaking as opposed to reading or singing or whatever, and you're a vastly experienced speaker now. Is there any advice you could give to any of our younger viewers who are perhaps embarking on their first speeches this year, or trying to develop their talent in that area?
Yeah, well, one of the things I would always say is preparation is the key for any event. Doesn't matter what you're doing. So you need to prepare properly, and don't be afraid to have notes in front of you. I mean, you won't always be reading from your notes, but at least have them there as a kind of comfort blanket. I mean, one of the things that probably got me into the after dinner circuit was the experience of dealing with the media, you know, live interviews and not knowing what they're going to ask you, and you kind of build up a confidence. But as we've heard it said before, it's everybody's worst nightmare having to speak in public. But there's ways around it if you prepare yourself properly. I always find, and maybe not everyone will agree with this, but I think a bit of humour in your speech always goes down well. It doesn't matter whether you're doing the immortal memory, toast to the lassies, the reply. Judge your audience and put in a bit of humour, because that's what people are looking for, in my opinion. We've all been to events, maybe even burn suppers, where the immortal memory is so dry that people are getting switched off with it. And you've got to remember that not everyone that you're speaking to is an out-and-out Burns enthusiast. They may have been there for their first Burns supper. So try and make it enjoyable for them. I think, well, I know from reading it, that Burns liked a bit of humour as well. He enjoyed a good laugh. He enjoyed a drink. He enjoyed being with his cronies. So try and kind of replicate what Burns would have wanted. Would he want you to be sitting there listening to verse after verse with absolutely no humour whatsoever in it? I don't think so. So prepare properly, do your research properly, have your notes in front of you, and timing's key for humour, without a doubt. So not everybody can be a stand-up comedian, but if you don't prepare properly, then you're going to fail.
That's great advice. Jim, we're getting to our 45, 50-minute stage. Is there anything else that we want to talk to Iain about?
Just any, I mean, where do you see yourself with Burns in the future?
Well, I mean, hopefully, Jim, I'll still be doing Burns suppers over the next 10, 20 years if I'm spared. When I look at some of our guys that we know, we worked in the police, Bert Thompson, to Bert's probably in his 80s now, still performing at the highest level. So hopefully I'll be still doing that. I'll certainly be involved with Bridgeton Burns Club. I'll be on the board as a past president, so I'll be keen to do that. I know that I was secretary for 5 years and kind of had to kind of revamp the whole structure of the club, and that was just because it was required. It was needing kind of modernised, and but I earnestly hope that all these Burns clubs that we've got will encourage younger members to come in, because they are the lifeblood for any organisation, and Bridgeton's no different. You know, although we're a very kind of sound and solid board, we need younger people to get involved. And I think one of the satisfying things from our point of view is we've witnessed kids coming through the Bridgeton Burns Club schools competition who have gone to the Royal Conservatoire, who have gained this massive confidence about standing up and performing in front of an audience, and they've come back to support the club as adjudicators, for example. There's a young group called the Logan sisters, and in fact their brother's part of that as well. I mean, they are hopefully going to be professional singers in a not too distant future, and they came through the Bridgeton Burns Club. And of course, our most famous exponent of Bridgeton Burns Club was Lulu, who took part in one of our school's competitions when she was about 10. So the world is your oyster from that point of view, of gaining that experience and talent. And that's what we aim to promote at Bridgeton. And that was the reason it was formed, the dinner and getting the kids involved in the schools competition.
Certainly having Lulu as one of your alumni is something to shout about, I would have thought.
Oh, we've used that on numerous occasions, Douglas. Used that on numerous occasions. We've mentioned it. We probably mention it every anniversary dinner.
Excellent.
So.
This subject came up in one of our recent podcasts, and the challenge of keeping young people interested in Burns. And any thoughts about how we do that?
Well, I think it relies a lot on the schools. You know, I mean, that's where most people probably had their first introduction to Burns, was through the schools. And fortunately, we've got some, in fact, some of the teachers that are teaching in our primary schools and secondary schools were participants in the Bridgeton Burns Club schools competition. Now, the problem you've got is there's a lot of challenges in education, as we know. And Burns is not really on the curriculum. So it needs the enthusiasm of a teacher to drive that forward. And that's where I see we need to get more and more schools involved and get teachers involved. And I know their time is precious. They've got other demands. But, you know, we can't let this go in Scotland. We've got this product that needs to be sold to these schools, and it's a fantastic product for Scotland. And Robert Burns, you know, given what he achieved in his short life, I mean, that needs to be continued in the schools as much as possible, so that young people are aware of that. I mean, there's youngsters that you speak to, and even the younger generation, they've got no idea what Burns did in his lifetime, other than the involvement with Old Lang Syne of pulling that together. But that's our knowledge of Burns, and that's sad. So we need to be driving that forward into the schools and give the children an opportunity to see just how much this man meant to our country.
And it's great that Bridgeton Burns Club is doing so much work in that area. It just leaves me to say, Iain, thanks very much for spending time with us and telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.